We've been living in this peaceful neighborhood for 5 years now, nestled in a quiet cul-de-sac where well-mannered residents generally minded their own business and maintained an atmosphere of mutual respect. The houses were well kept, the streets were clean, and the community had a pleasant, suburban charm. Except for one person who stood out from this harmonious setting. Our neighbor Linda, or as we half-jokingly, but perhaps more accurately than we'd like to admit, called her Karen. Linda had quite the reputation in the neighborhood. She was our self-appointed vigilante of suburban propriety, always watching from behind her curtains, always ready with unsolicited commentary. If your grass grew even half an inch too long, you'd receive a detailed critique of your lawn maintenance habits. A package remained on your porch past sunset? Expect a strongly worded note about security concerns and property values. She documented every perceived infraction with meticulous attention to detail. But for the most part, we'd all learned to treat her persistent monitoring as mere background noise. Irritating, certainly, but ultimately manageable in the grand scheme of things. Until Machi came into our lives and changed everything. Machi was a beautiful rescued tabby, distinguished by her striking big green eyes that seemed to hold endless wisdom, and she had developed in particular fondness for sunbathing on our windowsill. My 10-year-old daughter had formed an instant connection with her, and the two quickly became inseparable companions. Through patient training and consistent care, we taught Machi to respond reliably when called, though she maintained her independent spirit. During pleasant days, she enjoyed lounging in our securely fenced backyard, always staying within the boundaries we'd established, never venturing beyond our property line. One seemingly ordinary morning, Machi didn't respond to our calls. Initially, we dismissed it as just one of her lazy moods, nothing to worry about. But as the hours slowly ticked by, concern began to grow. We conducted an increasingly frantic search of the yard, checking every corner and crevice. We examined all the bushes, investigated behind every tree, and even peered around the neighbor's shed. Finding nothing, that horrible, gut-wrenching feeling of panic began to settle in. Then, my daughter's sharp eyes caught something unusual. She pointed urgently at Linda's upstairs window. "Mom, look!" And there she was, our beloved Machi, pressed against the glass from inside Linda's house, looking down at us with those familiar green eyes. At first, I tried to rationalize the situation, convinced there had to be some reasonable explanation. Perhaps Machi had accidentally found her way inside. Maybe Linda was temporarily watching her for some well-intentioned reason. Maintaining my composure, I walked over to Linda's house and rang the doorbell. She answered with that characteristic expression of hers, a smile that somehow managed to be simultaneously sweet and condescending. "Oh, hello. Can I help you?" With measured words, I explained that we'd spotted Machi inside her house, suggesting that our cat must have somehow wandered over. "Oh," she replied with exaggerated innocence. "Well, she looked rather hungry when I found her. I naturally assumed she must be a stray. She's been outside quite frequently, you know." This was an outright fabrication, and we both knew it. Machi wore a clearly visible collar, complete with an identification tag that prominently displayed our phone number. "I'm sorry," I responded, struggling to maintain an even tone despite my growing frustration. "But she's our cat, my daughter's beloved pet, to be specific. We'd very much like to have her back now." Linda's posture stiffened as she folded her arms across her chest. "Well, she appears to be quite content here. And truthfully, I've become rather fond of her myself. If you were truly responsible pet owners, perhaps you wouldn't allow her to roam about without proper supervision." I stood there, momentarily speechless at her audacity. "Are you actually refusing to return our cat?" Linda's response was wordless but clear. She simply shut the door in my face. Left with no other choice, I called animal control. The animal control officer provided clear guidance. I needed to contact the non-emergency police line and file a formal report. Following their advice, I made the call. Shortly afterward, a police officer arrived at our home, maintaining a professional and measured approach to the situation. I presented all our documentation, numerous photographs showing Machi with my daughter, comprehensive veterinary records, and most importantly, proof of her microchip registration. The officers proceeded to Linda's house to address the situation. Predictably, she launched into a series of protests. She insisted we had abandoned the cat, emphasized how Machi had come to her voluntarily, and repeatedly stressed the special bond they had supposedly developed in just a few hours. However, when they scanned Machi's microchip, the evidence was irrefutable. She was legally registered as our pet. The officer explained the situation to Linda in no uncertain terms. Returning Machi wasn't a matter of choice or personal preference. It was a legal obligation. Faced with this reality, she finally had to concede. With an unnecessarily theatrical sigh and muttering under her breath about how some people simply don't deserve to have animals, she finally relinquished Machi to us. Here's the satisfying epilogue to our tale. Barely a week later, an official notice appeared on the neighborhood bulletin board. Linda was facing substantial fines for a zoning violation. Apparently, her shed expansion had been constructed without proper permits, and someone had anonymously reported the infraction. While I've never explicitly claimed responsibility for this fortuitous timing, I can't help but appreciate how karma seems to have a way of balancing the scales. As for our beloved Machi, she's now equipped with a state-of-the-art GPS tracker and has claimed a new favorite lounging spot, our windowsill that offers a perfect view of Linda's yard. And I've noticed something rather amusing. Sometimes when she's perched there, I could swear she holds her gaze just a few moments longer than strictly necessary, as if sending a silent message to our neighborly nemesis.